Hey, Bill here. I hope you all really enjoyed that murder mystery. It was a lot of fun to do. We're doing something slightly different than we've done before, which is we have our own separate episode now as like a post-mystery debrief, talking about what happened in the mystery, what we could do differently, what we were feeling, and how it all went. We're also, in this episode, naming our detective of the arc to go up on our wall of detectives, so stay tuned for that. As we said when we started this arc, there'll be some kind of break between this mystery and the next. It's not going to go straight into the next mystery, but it will be less of a break than it was before this one. So keep an ear out for when that next one will start. If you want to keep up to date with any announcements we make based on that, you can join our Discord. There's a link below, or follow us on Twitter or Facebook, which is where those announcements will come out. In the meantime, if you're looking for stuff to listen to, if you haven't checked out our other show, Escape This Podcast, you should go and check that out. We're starting a new connected arc of virtual escape rooms at the end of January, so that's something fun you can listen to. And we also have a bunch of bonus episodes for our patrons. Now, our Patreon started as an Escape This Podcast Patreon, but is now a general area for all of the shows that we make, which means there is now bonus episodes for both Escape This Podcast and Solve This Murder appearing there. If you listen to our bonus episode before this arc started, that's what we're doing on our Patreon. For all our $5 donors, you can get every fortnight a new episode of 2-Minute Mysteries, in which we solve 2-minute mysteries which are from the books written by Donald Sobel, and we discuss them, we make our own versions, and then we try and solve the actual mysteries. That's been a lot of fun. There's also bonus episodes for all of our escape room-based content and other things there. We're also in the process of working on trying to get badges going for Solve This Murder. We've already shipped out Escape This Podcast badges to all our $10 donors, but from this point on, we're going to have the $10 be, you can choose whether you want Solve This Murder badges or Escape This Podcast badges, and you can also get both at a higher tier as well. That's still in the works. We're hoping to get that organized. But if you want to check that out, that's a really great place to get even more extra bonus content and help support our show and support what we're doing in the kind of podcasting area. So hopefully you enjoy this sort of debrief. It's a very long episode. It's not a brief debrief, but I hope you enjoy it. And we'll see you when the next murder mystery starts. Bye. Welcome to Solve This Murder. I'm your detective, Bill.
And I'm your crime scene criminal and witnesses, Dani.
Except, no.
Yeah.
Like, no, I'm not your detective, Bill. I'm your fireside chat, post-show discussion having person, Bill.
I'm just Dani.
Oh, she's just Dani. So this is Solve This Murder, I suppose, but not quite. We're
retrospecting.
We're discussing this murder. We're talking. I don't know a name for this. See, on our other show, Escape This Podcast, we called our post-show discussion episodes Podcast This Escape. It was silly
easy
and ridiculous and backwards. But I don't really have a good name for what this is.
Murder This Solve doesn't
Murder This Solve
quite
doesn't
work.
make any sense, nor does Podcast This Murder, because that's also not quite right. If you have any ideas, please email them to us or tweet them at us, and maybe we can get some audience input on naming what this new version of what this new thing is.
It'll remain Solve This Murder post-show.
Yeah, Solve This Murder post-show is so boring. Say
But it's
these...
Somps. Somps,
Welcome
Billy.
to Somps, everybody. So on Somps, what we do is...
Wait, that's not how things work. Where did I get that O from?
Wait, where did you get that O from? Why am I listening to you? Welcome to Stumps.
I'm just Dani.
Welcome to Stumps. On Stumps, what we do is we discuss the murder mystery that we just did. This is not something we've done before, but we're doing it now. We're just kind of talking through what happened. It's a retrospective. I think on earlier ones, we sort of added that in to the end of the final episode.
Yeah, a little more.
Just to fill time. But I think this is better to give it its own episode with its own full sort of...
It's really fair. I think it'll help me more when it comes to creating the next one.
Yeah, that's true. Now, it has been a while since we recorded this, the episodes for this murder.
Yeah, how much do you remember?
I don't think I remember a fair amount. It's not like we've recorded any other murders since, so it's all fine. But we're recording this now after the final episode has come out, and we've had everybody's guesses in. So we're also today going to be naming the detective of the arc, the person who's going on our wall of detectives, which you can now check out. There'll be a link below, but you can go to something like literally Consume This Media, which is our company, consumethismedia.com/wall of detectives or wall-of detectives. Yeah, there'll be a link below, but you can go and see who's finished every arc. The other thing we haven't done is because of the hiatus, we never actually did a detective of the arc for Slane's Singer. We're not going to do that this episode, but we will do that before the next arc comes out. I think we need to. We can't leave it with a no detective.
But I don't remember anything.
We'll have to go back and investigate the archives.
Man.
That's what we're going to have to do. But we're going to do that closer to the end, probably. What we're going to start with is discussing how it was. Now, how did you feel about the murder in general, Dani? I'm putting it on you.
I don't know. What do you want me to say about that? Like all of them, I felt like I was in a chaotic panic the entire time.
I will say, actually, one thing we can discuss is we had, during this recording, so we recorded over quite a few weeks as well. Usually we record this in 1 or 2 days. This took us a lot longer. We were basically doing a single day for every episode to record, which was and not one after the other, with some breaks in between, which was a bit different than usual. But we realized one of the conflicting images that we had in our heads that led to some issues in previous murder mysteries, and this one as well, which is a difference in how we're picturing it as a piece of media, I guess, or what makes a murder mystery, or the style of murder mystery, I suppose.
Yeah.
I don't know quite how to identify this.
But when we talked about it before, I feel like it ended up being a difference in level of proceduralism and when to go from one thing to the next thing and what order in which to do things tended to be a big conflict.
We're sort of saying that in my head, what I was picturing, not knowingly, but I think I was picturing this like a police procedural rather than a whodunit. Because my instinct was always, like an order of, like, have you ever seen an episode of Law and Order? Which I haven't seen that many of, so I don't know why. But like cop shows, right, where the structure of a mystery solving is you find out about the crime, you talk to one of the people, that person says something, and they always end the interview like, of course, John was always around, and there's like a look to the camera, and then the next scene is an interview with John, and John tells you a little bit more, and he says something that indicates that you should go and do the next thing, so you go and do that.
And you find a piece of evidence that suggests one person, so you walk up to that person and ask them about it. Right?
You find the evidence that indicates it was Mark, so you go up to Mark, you say, what about this evidence? Because that's the next beat of the story, and each one leads you narratively from the start to the finish, and then something will happen at the end. Like, that's kind of how those procedural things are done. Even stuff like House, right? Where they'll go, oh, I'm House, I think it's this. We do the test for that disease, that reveals some new weird thing. So now I think it's this disease. So I do the test for that disease, that reveals some new fact. Now I think it's this, and it just follows on that one.
Whereas
procedurals follow that path, and I think in my head that's what I was doing.
Yeah, whereas where I'm coming from, it's mostly, I suppose, about just looking at your basic means, motive, opportunity, and carrying those, and those are the I need those things all around with you as you do everything, and you just sort of pick things up and put them in your knowledge inventory as time goes by, and so you keep all of them, and then every now and again you take all of the things you've got and try to arrange them in a pattern.
And I think the closest we got to that, because we had this discussion right before the Red Strings episode, because the Red Strings, which was like a one-off moment in this, is pretty much how you envision all of the mystery should take place.
Pretty much.
It's every new piece of information. You go back to your board and you think, okay, now I know this. Let's not follow that. Let's take stock of it and re-ask questions. Go back to the old people, the previous people. Look at this.
What could that mean? Where could it fit in?
And I think the difference is like a procedural in that A goes to B, goes to C, goes to D, goes to solution makes sense, but definitely not in this context where you had no control over what A was. And therefore, even if A went to B, went to C, went to D, if I randomly decide to start at C, we'll never see A and B, right? And because of that collaborative mystery solving thing, I'm trying to follow not knowingly, but unconsciously, I'm trying to follow a structure that doesn't work when it's not a pre-written narrative.
And it definitely makes me feel like I'm in a struggle with a couple of ones, this one included, because it means you find a path with one of the characters who is not the murderer, and you follow them incessantly. And they are the focus. And so then by the time find out that they're not the murderer, it feels like, well, why did we just waste all our time on that person then?
Because it also, for me, it makes sense, because I can only follow up on things that I know about, And so when you give me a new thing, you say, and also here's this piece of evidence or here's this piece of rumor that you found. I can't, like, it's odd for me to feel like, oh, a lead? I'm not going to follow that because maybe there are other leads to follow, right? So I'm feeling like when you give me these things, you are telling me this is what you should do. Like, if you want to follow appropriately, this is the next step. I've given it to you right now.
I feel like that's already an interesting point that you've used. You keep using the word lead. I've never seen Poirot talk about having a lead. That's a police term.
Yeah, right? It's a procedural thing. Hey, we've got a lead, we're going to follow it, right? But I think that's what I'm doing. And it's me, like, rather than trying to find the stuff myself, I'm going, well, you've just given me a thing. Why would I not go, right? When you say, oh, and then I heard Izzy's phone going off, I'd be like, great, that's clearly what the next step is because Dani's given it to me. Dani said, Izzy's got a weird phone thing. If I'm making another decision of what I want to do, I'm going to pick up on the thing that just came out of that conversation. I'm going to do that as my next thing.
That's fair. Whereas for me, that would be a thing to keep in mind. Maybe there will be some way that you can investigate that further later. But do not just go up to Izzy and ask her about her weird phone thing. Because to me, that then puts me in the position of, oh, crap, now I've got to figure out, is Izzy the sort of person who is going to lie in this situation, who's going to semi-tell the truth in the situation? Is she going to tell the whole truth in this situation? What if you try to intimidate her? What sort of level of intimidation is she susceptible to? And that is a lot to process.
But at the same time,
go.
like, to me, it feels like what we hate about... So we play Nancy Drew games on Twitch. One of the 3 aspects of Consume This Media is Play This Game, which is our Twitch channel. And we play Nancy Drew games. And we have a common thing, which we both get incredibly angry at, which is when Nancy solves a puzzle and it's like a piece of paper that says, you know, Jen was in the bar at the time of the murder. And we go, oh my gosh. And then we go talk to Jen and the only conversation options are goodbye because Nancy doesn't want to talk about this yet. We instinctively, when we're given that situation, we have that feeling of like, a piece of thing. Let's go confront Jen about it.
I disagree.
We just had that in the last stream we were playing.
I think that those games have taught us that sometimes that's the right thing to do. Were it a real life situation, my instinct would be to go to someone else and talk to them about this thing.
I don't know. Maybe. But yeah, so I think we kind of identified this.
I would expect Jen to lie.
We identified this as
what
something...
do you do in that case? If you confront this Jen person, say, what is this? And she says,
Yeah,
then you're just as stuck as if there were no option.
Well, what if you go say to someone else, what is this? And they go, That's the sound. That's how you flippantly make the same sound.
Yeah, but you're assuming that Jen is guilty of something, in which case the other people are not guilty of something. Therefore, they would have no reason to do that. They would be trying to help. Even if like things that they say are not amazingly relevant, they would have more that they would try to offer.
Oh, yeah, they're going to try and help, are they? Like Winifred did in this arc?
Yes. I don't. What?
She was covering for the murderer the whole time. By the way, spoilers. If you haven't listened to the arc, I don't know why you're listening to this, but Winifred was covering for the murderer. But yeah, so I think we kind of identified that we had a different approach to how you would do this,
and that we still haven't quite figured it out. 6 or whatever mysteries in.
Yeah, right. That we never noticed that this was what was going on, but it was clearly a cause of confusion in creating each of these mysteries or in playing them through. Is that you built them expecting a different style of mystery solving than I brought into it. And I solved them expecting a different style of mystery writing.
Yeah.
I expected you to be laying I think, again, never thought this through, but I think I had this expectation that you had set up piles of breadcrumbs and I was just going to follow one of those lines and it was going to lead me there. You know, it was clue to clue to clue to clue to clue until I'm done.
Yeah, and that's
right?
definitely not what I was thinking.
And again, maybe has some connection to the way we've been doing virtual escape rooms, right? Where, you know, you'll often have an arrow path that leads all through and then a separate one and they'll converge somewhere. And so the general escape room strategy is you find something, you follow that clue until it leads to the dead end, then you go, great, that's a dead end, I'm going to go find another starting point, follow that until it meets the same dead end. And so that still has the same feeling of like, just that's 2 separate trails of breadcrumbs that will then lead to the same
Yeah, I approach
spot.
mysteries totally differently
and
to
I think,
escape
again,
rooms.
I'm caught up on this escape room thing, which we had from the very beginning where I was trusting everybody and not thinking. And now it's a separate aspect of that that is making this solution a bit harder.
Yeah, to me, murder mysteries, when I try to read them, and I'm feeling particularly smug about this because I just read another Agatha Christie that I hadn't read for a while, and I totally picked who the murderer was relatively early on. It just becomes a matter of...
Idiot Poirot.
You look at all... It wasn't
You're an idiot, Miss Marple. You're an idiot ancient...
Yes, it was the one set in ancient Egypt.
Egyptian detective?
No.
Grain harvester? What do people do in ancient Egypt?
Lots of things.
Potter?
I mean, they were largely like a big farming family. They had lots of land.
Archaeologist?
No.
Okay.
But there were a lot of people in it. They didn't all have one job. But yeah, to me, it tends to be cool. Let's look at all of your suspects. Let's look at what could have happened. Now, initially, you're at the point where any of them could have done it. And as bits of evidence come in, what you're trying to do is say, cool, does anything rule out this person having been able to do it?
You're doing it like a logic puzzle with those grids.
I mean, a little bit, I suppose. Yeah, so like, everything is an option at the start, and you're trying to make little crosses in the possible lines that are there and see what thing still definitely flows through. And by the end, ideally, there should only be one that follows everything and that checks off everything as you go through.
That is all. That does feel. It does feel the same as like one of those logic puzzles where you go, okay, so A can't be a triangle. Okay, so I cross off that A is a triangle. I know that for a fact. And then B, well,
B has one fewer sides than F.
A. Okay, cool. Yeah. So that can't make F can't be this. And then once you've usually, when you do those, you go through the whole list, and then you go back to the start. And you go through the whole list again, and you see if any of those were contradictions.
Exactly.
And then you go through again, and you just keep rounding these contradictions
I suppose that's
off
true.
until you get to the final solution. So maybe, because I can't think of anything as the way it is, I keep thinking of these as escape rooms. I'll just think of them like logic puzzles, and then we're done. And now I've solved the problem. But yeah, so what that might mean for the future, for more of we haven't even talked about the actual mystery yet. We've just talked about this. But what that might mean is that for future episodes, future mysteries, there'll be a different style to it, I think.
Let's find out. Let's find out how much we just sort of fall back
Maybe
into what we're
that might also
subconsciously
happen.
expecting.
Like, my gosh, I have on the first page of my notes a murder-solving plan that was in no way followed. Because I started the murder-solving plan, and then I found a little clue, and then I just followed it off on a tangent. So I was like, I've got this. I think I said it in the first episode. I've got this murder-solving plan, which is like 1, investigate the scene, look at what happened, see if anything's out of place, physical evidence. 2, recreate the crime, question witnesses about the times, what they saw, compare for contradictions. Motives. So that's number 3. Motives. Ask witnesses about themselves, other witnesses. Didn't do that. My gosh. Victim. Analyze for the motive. And 4, opportunity. Alibis. Search the witnesses, time of day, things like that. Collect all that, solve, denouement, right? That was not how it went because I started investigating the scene and I was okay. And then I was like, great, now I'll recreate the crime. I'll question people where they were. And then I was like, oh, a party. Okay, now I've got to find out about this party. Now I've followed the party. Oh, Isabella was left? Okay, now I've got to talk to Isabella what she did when she left. Okay, she left. Oh, but somebody else left. Okay, so I've got to talk to Rome about where he went. Oh, now I'm following these bottles. Okay, and I just went on and I got caught away and I never went back to the other stuff.
And don't get me wrong, that stuff was good to have. It just wasn't
good to
like the one thing to focus on.
Yeah.
It was a piece.
Yeah.
And it's just unfortunate that in the following of that, you would do things like not talk to 2 characters until episode 5.
Yeah, right, which I do all the time because nothing just directly led them to me. Because you're not trying to lay a thing that leads me to talk to them because you're like, surely he'll talk to them because he wants to get all the information. But I'm like, hey, if no breadcrumbs lead to their door, I'm not knocking. I need a breadcrumb trail. And then I'll knock on their door. And that's kind of like the issue. That's where... So things that you would expect as a basic reaction, I'm like, why? Obviously she doesn't expect it because she didn't lead me on a trail to them.
Yeah, whereas I'm going, oh my God, these are 2 murder suspects that for some reason you don't care about.
I just don't care about them. With murder suspects? Well, tell me, did you overhear somebody putting bottles and burying some bottles while whistling? Because if you didn't, I don't even care.
Well, look, let's not say that there was nothing that helped lead towards it because things that you learned about the party was Vicky showed something on her phone to the 2 other girls that were still at the party.
That's true. But also, like, there are some situations like that where there's multiple things to do and then doing one of those things takes up 3 episodes, you know?
True.
Following up on Roman gets me to Roman to Isabel to bottles. Like that takes... So even if 3 episodes earlier I thought I have 2 things to do. I got to talk to the last few victims and I got to talk to Roman. If I start talking to Roman and what in my head is like the like finishing off that conversation will take us 3 episodes. And then it's like I've been ignoring them the whole time. But it's like, no, they've always been number 2 on my list. It's just that number 1 took me a huge amount of time. And by the time I get to number 2, and so like that's kind of hard as well. This feeling of like, at what point in following up on Roman stuff do I go, I now don't care about you. I'm not going to follow up. I'm not going to finish the sentence that is half formed in my head. I'm going to go and talk to somebody else. It feels like I haven't finished off that conversation. But the finishing off of that conversation is a whole mystery that takes 3 episodes. So there's an issue there as well, that even if I go, oh, I'm going to talk to Chelsea, it's the second thing I'll do, it can still take 5 episodes out of 7 episodes to get there, because number 1 was substantial and I wanted to cover it all. That's why I always think like there was some being able to use that red strings method of flashing back to random conversations and then flashing forward again, where there's no urgency of time now. There's no urgency of weird kind of like, I can just cut that off. All right, let's cut that off. I'll follow up on that in a second. But first of all, let me jump back to this other string that I've got. And I think even if I just frame it that way, not in narrative, but in story, I'll be more comfortable with that. I'll be more like, that's really interesting. I'm going to follow up on that when I next address this point. But there's another point I haven't addressed for a while, and jump across to it without feeling like, I think because I wasn't physically in the space for all the red strings, I felt more, well, I'm never physically in the space. We don't record on location. We're in a tiny room, well, a normal sized room in an apartment. We didn't go to camp, I'm saying. We didn't. I know maybe you were thinking that during COVID we still flew to a random summer camp somewhere in the middle of nowhere and started. We didn't. That was all magic. That was all movie magic. We've been sitting in our apartment the whole time. But no, because my character wasn't like there. You know, it can feel more weird to be mid conversation with someone in character in that time and go, "See you, Roman. I'm going to go and talk to somebody else." But when I was doing it as like flashbacks, it was quite easy to be like, and then, okay, I'm going to zoom out of that conversation and now say I had this other conversation and I'm going to go over there. And it didn't feel like I was breaking that because I wasn't really there. I was remembering it, you know? So it's much easier to be like, great, shelve that, go to here. Whereas otherwise I'm literally sitting there thinking, and it doesn't make any sense, but it also does. I'm going, well, I'm standing right next to the cabin. It would be weird to walk all the way over to another cabin. So no, it wouldn't. All you say is, I walk over. But because I'm picturing me already there, it's like, well, I'm there. You know? It's like a tabletop role-playing game where it's like, technically, there's no penalty to being like, all right, now we walk 4 days to go to some other town. All right, now 4-day walk back. That's fine. But it's also weird. It's like, no, that's 8 days. 8 real days. Why would I take all that time? It's like, it didn't take time. It took 2 seconds to say I walk 4 days.
That's more video game than tabletop RPG, because that can have more consequences potentially.
The other thing that we did the other thing we did on Twitch recently was we played an escape room where there was time travel. And it really took an emotional leap for me to be like, now let's just quickly jump back to the present and then quickly jump back to the past and then present. I was like, no, I want to complete all of the past, then come back to the present and never have to come back. Because we're here already. I don't want to travel through time. You know? So I think that those transitions were easier when I was in this like abstracted, I'm collecting the evidence in my hotel room afterwards and remembering what I did. It was easy to jump around. But in universe, when I'm like pretending that I'm there chatting, it's quite hard to jump around as much.
I guess this is very interesting. I don't know, because it's not like I envision you jumping around a lot, and the way I design these or expect you to go about solving things. It's just that I expect that the order that I have of how I would do things is different from the order that you follow things. Like for me, getting a quick, brief idea of who everyone is of utmost importance.
Yeah, and it should be. Yeah, I don't know what to say. I just go off and do their thing. You know what I'm doing? You know what I'm doing? I'm sitting there, and I'm sure I've done this so many times on all of our shows. I'm getting my plate of food, and I'm eating all the salad, and then I'm eating all the chips, and then I'm eating the entire burger, and then I'm eating all of the little potato side thing. That's 2 sides of potato. That's ridiculous. But I'm doing that. I'm like, okay, I'll get to the whole meal eventually, but I'm not mixing it together. I'm not cutting up some
See, whereas I also feel like I'm doing exactly the same thing. And to me, it's as if you are taking a couple of carrots and then a bit of potato and then a bit of steak and hoping that made a complete meal.
Yeah, I suppose.
That's how I'm visualizing what you're doing.
You're picturing each step as one of the aspects of the meal, and I'm picturing each person as one of the aspects of the meal.
Sure, what the hell?
So what our real problem is that when Dani pictures a meal, she pictures the same people divided up into different parts of a meal, where I'm picturing each person representing an individual part of a meal. That's the real problem we're having. It's not about procedurals and mysteries. It's about, is a single person a pile of chips, or is their hat the chips, their shirt the steak, their pants the salad, and their shoes the salt and pepper?
My brain has nothing in here. I don't know what's going on anymore. Just apparently we think different about this.
Dani has all of her scoops of ice cream in a single bowl, where mine are stacked on top of each other in a cone. And I finish each one, and I go through, whereas Dani can just like scoop through and take a couple of each.
This is exactly what I'm saying. I feel like you
now,
do.
the problem here is that when Dani pictures multiple scoops of ice cream, she's picturing each stage as one scoop, but I'm picturing each person as a single scoop.
So one of the other problems that can exist in regards to this, especially when you say that one conversation can end up feeling like a more important thing and a thing to focus on and you can't jump away from it, is the issue, which I still haven't fully worked out. I know what information you need to get to you. How much should I specify which character is going to give you that information versus it is just information that is sort of out there?
In like a, when you're writing it, do you say like, Chelsea knows that someone was there? Or
Yeah,
do you just go,
Chelsea will give you this information, because then it's more certain, but it also means that if you don't bring that up to Chelsea, it will never come up.
It is, that is a tough question, right? Because you want it to be person specific.
But because I don't know how you're going to go about things, I don't know how to create balance.
Yeah, that's an interesting question.
It's really hard.
Yeah, it's hard
Why
to balance.
don't we just script this?
Because it's fun. That's the point, is that it's a terrible game that I'm bad at. I mean, a good game that I'm terrible at. But yeah, that's an interesting question, because what type of information is I mean, can you do both at once? Just go like, here's stuff that every character has, but also here is certain information that no matter what needs to be out by episode 2. Here's some information.
You think I should time them like that?
You should, and so like you have like.
Because again, no, I don't know when you are going to reach something interesting, which tends to be when we end
but
things.
I wonder
so
if like you can put in some limits of like, no matter what has happened in the investigation, by the end of part 2, we need to know this fact, because otherwise the audience is never going to get there.
All right, then let's go with episode 1. You talked to Harriet. You talked to Trenton. You looked at the crime scene. What if what I wanted for episode 1 was something that only the kids knew?
Well, I don't know. You have to, I guess you'd have like some hint of it in the crime scene. Like if you really, really wanted that by episode 1, I knew that there was a party, for example. So what we did get out of episode 1, which is very reasonable, is cause of death, right? I think if we didn't have cause of death by the end of episode 1, because I was talking to people about a party, I think that's something that everybody should know. Because I think that really restricts people's ideas, right? Because otherwise everyone's thinking like, and who had a gun? So it doesn't matter who had a gun, no one got shot, right? So I think cause of death is a classic thing that should come out episode 1.
Okay.
But if, for example, I reckon...
Then there are some things where, lots of mysteries where that would be known like immediately, like before you arrive at the crime scene.
True. That's by episode 1. Done. Doesn't have to be the big reveal, but it's just one of those things that could be like, whatever, right? I'm saying...
Okay, what do you think these points would have been for this one? The information that needed to come out? Because, I mean... Like, it's very hard to retrospectively do that because we did find ending points.
Yeah, we did find cause of death. There was a party. There was blackmail in like each episode going through. So we kind of did hit those parts. But really, this isn't an issue that we have. We generally are pretty good at hitting the big things. My problem is not being able to contextualize those big things by having known everybody in the thing. Maybe this is just something that I need to set up, that I need to say to myself, by the end of episode 2, I will have talked to every major player.
Yeah, maybe this just is the thing,
because like
your goal, you have your goal as solving the murder, whereas my goal is eliminate all the innocent people.
Yeah,
Wait,
so maybe
that sounds bad.
Dani wants to eliminate all innocent people. You heard it here first.
Well, yeah, to me, knowing who all of the suspects are does feel like it is the first thing to do, because the rest of the show to me and the rest of a mystery to me is crossing them out.
Exactly, right? Logic puzzle. Again, I'm not going to start a logic puzzle until I've written A, B, C, D, E, triangle, squares, right? So maybe that's what I need to focus on more. Because I think, honestly, the things that come out, you're right, I think we hit them pretty well. We hit cause of death. We hit party. We hit blackmail. We hit all these sort of things.
But my big worry the entire time through with this pit in my stomach was that it wasn't going to matter. You hadn't spoken to Chelsea yet.
Exactly.
You didn't know who she was. You weren't going to care.
Yeah, so I don't think it's the issue of what comes out. I think we get those pretty well. It's that when they come out, I have no context because I haven't spoken to everybody. So maybe that's a thing that I just need to fix. And maybe a good rule of thumb from this point on, because it's been an issue before. So I think maybe
because the people who aren't the murderer also have to be interesting and have their own stories. So when you find one story, whether or not it's the murderer's story, you go to that story.
So yeah, I think maybe what I need to do is set up like an idea of that. I think that's a good kind of rule of thumb, right? By the end of the second episode, I should have at least had a conversation of some with everybody. Now that's a lot to get into 2 episodes. Because some of these conversations go for a while, but
they don't have to.
They don't have to, exactly. They go for a while because I keep following up.
I don't even care if you necessarily talk to them. Just have like an elevator pitch for each person.
Exactly. By the end, I should know who they all are. And therefore our audience will know who they all are. And then they can all make these suggestions and their guesses at a reasonable pace. Because it's right? For this one, when the fact that Chelsea was the murderer, we didn't speak to her until episode 5 out of 7. And so anybody who's guessing in the first 4 episodes,
it would be wild to guess Chelsea.
Now, I'm pretty sure some people did. And we're going to get to that when we talk about
as soon as Chelsea became an
character,
existent people started eyeing her suspiciously.
That was the thing that people were missing. But so, yeah, I think maybe for me, having an elevator pitch, you're right, for every character is a good idea by end of second episode. Maybe by end of second episode, I should have just like a Cluedo knowledge of everything. I should be like, who are the people? What are the rooms? What are the methods that could have been used to kill them?
Fantastic.
And now I can start ruling out, it can't have been Professor Plum in the study with the
And let's immediately rule out 5 out of 6 weapons here, because come on.
Because, I know that the rope was over here.
If it was the pistol, we know it wasn't the rope.
So I can set that up like a Cluedo game, like a logic puzzle. Once I've got at least a vague understanding of all the pieces on the board, then I can actually start crossing them off, ticking them, circling them, putting little question marks, realizing I don't have an indicator that means that Dani probably has one of the 3, but not all of the 3, and I need to up my Cluedo note-taking game.
Yeah.
Maybe that is like the takeaway. That's what we got to do, rather what I have to do. Because that's an issue that I've got, which is I'm not getting a breadth of context so that I can't get enough meaning out of the things that are revealed. And therefore neither can our audience, because they don't have the context, because I'm the one who's supplying it to them. You've got it. I'm the courier of context, is what they call me. Then we're going to start the next one. Hi, I'm your detective and courier of context, Bill.
You're good.
How many times, if I'd added that to the intro, would I screw that up? Hi, I'm your detective and courier of context courier and courier of context, Bill. That'd be terrible.
Yeah, fantastic. I get worried about mine every single time.
I'm your crime scene, criminal, witnesses, and spectacular sleuth secret siphoner. I siphon secrets off to the spectacular sleuth.
Oh, okay.
Every episode I take the secrets and I siphon them off to a spectacular sleuth.
It makes me sound more like a secret secretor.
Just say that every episode you siphon the secrets off to a spectacular sleuth. Just say now.
It's not so much I can't say it, I can't remember it.
You siphon the secrets to a spectacular sleuth.
I siphon the secrets to a spectacular sleuth.
I
thought I forgot. Did I forget a word?
No, I think you got it.
Anyway, what are we doing?
I collect context and courier it to the characters.
This is all cut, right?
No, this is all in there. This is the whole episode. Okay, cool. So let's talk about let's talk more specifically about this.
Well, mystery. I do still have one.
Please, yeah.
So the one other thing that I suppose is a big issue when it comes to this sort of thing, and it's along the same lines as which character is going to convey certain information, is the improv aspect. And the fact that improving, well, I already hate it generally, but I could try to work with it. But in this, it is so much harder because everything that I say is important.
Yes.
You ask a character to tell you what time it is, I have to freeze for 10 minutes and think, is there an answer I could give that could break it? And I did that like 3 times when we were recording this, and I hope you edited them all out. because I would say, oh no, we've got to fix this. I ruined everything. So yeah, that happens, and it's really difficult to manage because obviously my notes aren't a book length. If I could make a whole novel out of these, it would be ironclad, I hope. But yeah, when I'm working with, how many pages do I have? 3 and a bit pages of notes for this mystery. There's not going to be every little detail in there.
Yeah.
I would be concerned if I did have every little detail in there. But it means that if you ask about something that I don't have, it becomes a panic point.
And it's difficult because, like, on my end, I can't not ask about details.
You don't know which ones are important.
Because there were some details, like, if I was just like, I'm not going to ask them what cabins they were in. I'm not going to ask them whether or not they did stuff at the party because maybe Dani doesn't know. That would be ridiculous because then I'd never get information.
And even then, just because it's a 3-page thing, like some information like which cabin people were in, yeah, I had that information. How important did it end up being?
Yeah, it wasn't any more important than anything,
yeah,
right?
It just happened to be what I had.
But then there's also the problem of if I ask for information that isn't written down and you just say, that's not in my notes, I can be like, great, now I know what isn't important. I've solved the mystery by being like, and, you know, did Vicky die at all? And you'd be like, oh, that's not in my notes. Like, she didn't even die.
But yeah, I can't just know you every time because that's the worst of improvisation. Some of your questions might be helpful to get there. And I then have to think about it and just go, cool, how can I make this so that this is a helpful thing? Because it does feel like it should be helpful. Yeah. But how do I make it so that it's the right level of helpful?
Yeah. And there is some production stuff that goes into that. Like sometimes there's conversations we've had where I've asked a question that could have been important and ended up being like, look, that's so irrelevant but requires so much effort to fit in. Let's just skip that. So occasionally they're having questions I've asked that we've just thought, let's just not ask the question. Let's just, because the answer is irrelevant, but could be super relevant if we got it the littlest bit wrong. You know, like what exact time did that happen? You'd be like, listen, that could contradict some other stuff later on, and it also doesn't actually matter because they're like, so balancing that's interesting sometimes. Generally, like we try very hard not to make it hints for each other. Well, I can't hint anything to you. You know what happened. But like, so that is sometimes does happen, right? There's sometimes a production solution to this of just like, don't worry about it. Just cut the question, move on. Doesn't matter whether or not Maggie, like if I had said like, oh, and what exact like medal tally did Maggie earn when she was an Olympian? I don't need you to be like, okay, well, let's say she got 2 bronzes, tried for silver, but ended up actually getting disqualified in that heat because she had the wrong shoes on. Because then I'd be like, shoes, it's all about the shoes. And you're just trying to add flavour to a pointless fact, right? So I'm sure if during it I had asked what was the medal tally, you'd be like, I don't care. Doesn't matter. Or you'd give an answer that's clearly flippant. Like, good. She did well. Whatever you construe as well, that's
but
it.
even then,
I'd be like, okay, well, is she well because she was taking the steroids?
But even then, I have to freeze and go, wait, hold on. Based on the story, the rest of what I have, is there anything that would contradict her having done well?
Yeah, right.
And
would I go, oh, if she did well, she wouldn't have needed steroids, so she never would have done the deal,
something
so
like
she
that.
wouldn't be involved, so she couldn't have done the murder. You know, so there are these things that have reaching implications.
Yeah, it's
a hard one to balance.
A lot going on.
And I think
there.
honestly, a lot of that needs to be balanced from a production point of view. That we need to be more comfortable, and I think we have been doing better with this one for this
puzzle. I mean, look, I could just try to tighten things up in my notes as well so that I know more.
That's also true. You can maybe, but so there's a balance there of like needing to know more, but also like I think especially for dinner party, it caused some real problems in terms of certain things being. There were certain questions I asked where you answered on the fly, and then we had to sort of go, okay, well, let's something about like the clients, and well, I won't talk too much about dinner party now because some people maybe listen to this and haven't listened to dinner party. But yeah, like issues of like who, like the job that someone had, and then what role they had in relation to a certain case that they were working because they were a lawyer, and who they were defending, what became like something I think I got super invested in, but ended up being something you made up on the spot.
Yeah, pretty much.
And it was kind of like, well, that's not good. You don't want that. You don't want me getting stuck in and stuff. And then you felt like you had to tie that back in and make it relevant. It's like, no, you could we should have just gone back at the start when I asked the question. You should have been like, doesn't matter.
And yet, doesn't that feel ridiculous when you ask a question like that to say it doesn't matter? Because that leaves me in a situation of going, no, I should know this.
And it should
this
matter.
Shouldn't be irrelevant. Like, what the hell?
But yeah, it's a hard balance. And it's a hard balance because it's a mystery.
Yeah. You know what it is? It feels like I have written a little story quickly and you are the editor poking interrogative holes in it.
Yeah. Well,
and
yeah,
there are
the
lots of
notes
holes. I
in the
haven't
margin.
spent that much time in this.
Why would he do this? Question mark.
And
Aren't
then-
they married?
And then I have to, in character, try to defend my choices.
Yeah, but it's hard
Which
because
is
you
terrifying.
can't take that aspect away because then I'm not doing an investigation,
course.
right? I can't not ask you questions
Yeah,
about people's backgrounds because I don't know what you have written down. And I don't want to miss where you're like, well, why didn't you ask?
This
you
format
idiot?
is a terrible pain. Why do we do this?
But I think being able to be, and I think we did a lot better in this one at being able to say, there were moments.
I mean, the pauses in between every episode definitely helped. So we
Yes.
could debrief after every single one.
But also there were plenty of moments where I asked a question that had a complex but irrelevant answer. And we kind of just said, don't ask that question. And like, great, we'll move on. Which is necessary, I think. But still playing the game. It's one of those things that like, it's still me doing that investigation, but just then cutting it out for people,
It's
right?
hitting the point in the typing puzzle games where you ask a question to an NPC and they respond, I am not familiar with that word.
Yeah, exactly, right? Just filling that out, right? And then removing it so like people don't need to see that. In the same way that we do this for Escape This Podcast, when people are solving puzzles, there are certain moments where like we'll give them a hint or clarify something for them, or they'll be discussing it, and we're like, and I cut that out of the final episode because it's like the audience doesn't need that. That's only adding confusion to a listening audience.
That's an interesting point that you call into question then, the idea of hints. Like, do I give you hints through this? And to what extent should I be giving you hints? Because I am at a constant fear in these games that I will just give the whole thing away
It's hard.
in 1 second. I cannot just give you the murderer on a platter. And knowing what clues are going to do that, in my experience, apparently it's none. Like, there is no single clue that can ever do that. But yeah, trying to balance that is really hard. And once or twice, I think maybe with once in this one and once in another one, after we've come away from an episode, I have said, cool, can you please go in this sort of direction?
Yeah, I think that happens. I don't think you've ever really given me hints in these games. But what we have occasionally done is had a discussion as to like, now, we want to get like a narrative flow back on track. So maybe, like if I'm considering two options, occasionally I've been like, given that we're on episode X out of whatever, should I go for this option instead of that one? And you get like maybe go that way just because it'll, like, I'll say beforehand, that will be a more interesting episode. And I'm like, great, all right, I'll go for the interesting episode.
Yeah.
So we've occasionally done those sort of like, not real hints, but just like sometimes you've given me guidelines on pacing. Like, I'll say, okay, here are my thoughts about what I'm going to do. Should I maybe skip that one? Because I feel like maybe that won't be, and you're like, yeah, skip it. Or you're like, no, don't skip it.
Yeah.
There'll be more there than you think. And I'm like, okay, cool. So we've done a few of those before. I hope that doesn't feel disingenuous to people listening, but I think it's a little bit of the balance that you need, right? Where it's the, hey, let's steer it this way just a touch and get back on track. I mean, you can tell by my complete floundering ignorance that it's not helping that much. I'm not getting the answer given to me. But yeah, occasionally we've done that to like bring the narrative on track. And I think there were moments of these, I think especially with, I had some obsession of being like, I have to go down to the boat area where Trenton is currently trying to tie the boat up because there's going to be so much there.
That's
and you've got to
true.
like, listen, it's literally what he described. Like, it's like, there is a boat, a section of rope is not there. That's the important part. If you go there, you're going to waste an episode finding a boat with a section of rope missing,
That
getting
sounds
no new
familiar.
information,
Yeah,
right?
that
I just
sounds like
really
what
thought
happened.
like, oh, you've said that there's a boat. That means that's the next trail in the breadcrumb trail. I have to go to the boats. I have to find this out. They'll find another dead body and it's going to have a note written on it that says, I was killed by Maggie, and you were just like, it's not going to be interesting. Don't waste an episode walking to a boatyard to find out nothing.
Yeah.
You've already got that information. So I think that was the one I remember from this arc of
Yeah,
me being
that's
like,
fair.
I got to see the boats. And it was just like, don't bother with the boats. Like, don't waste everyone's time. Go and talk to Chelsea, you idiot.
Yeah.
So I think that sometimes happens, right? That was one that happened in this arc. Let's talk more about this mystery itself.
Okay.
Now that we've done talking about our own failures
Yep.
and desires,
Sure.
which is not going to happen every time we do this because
Well, fingers crossed.
ideally we've now got this out in the open. We'll fix
Hopefully
it.
we get better.
We'll be the best. The next episode, you'd be like, next arc, you'd be like, oh, wow. He could be a real detective. And she could be a real murderer. I've got my notes in front of me for this arc.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, man, it's hot. I've got my notes in front of me for this arc. So I started looking at the camp. I made some notes. Family drama was a big one that sort of I thought was going to be relevant at the start. I think because we had a conversation with Simba and he was like, oh, with kids like these, sometimes the families...
Yeah, you immediately thought the parents were important.
Wow, that's so relevant.
And I freaking froze. Like, I managed to make it the tiniest bit relevant towards the end, but... Oh boy, yeah, that just happened. And...
Yeah, but I think it's because of this. I've got it. Literally, my opening notes are this: Riverwood Camping Centre, 10 kids per camp. Camp counselors check beds. Found girl dead. Third day of camp. Family drama? ?
Whereas, you want to see what my first 5 notes are?
Yeah, please.
My first 5 dot points when I came up with this. All right, first dot point: school camp, owner, counselors, kids. That was my first point.
Sure.
Okay. Next one says second murder of someone in the next cabin who inadvertently discovered hidden evidence.
That didn't happen.
Not quite.
But it was going to happen. That was the Roman. It was cool. So it kind of had a second attempted murder.
Yeah.
When did you change to an attempted murder?
Like in
the
episode?
Scene? Just because you didn't want to kill
No,
Roman,
it was because I knew we were right at the end and I figure this isn't going to have any emotional payoff if he dies.
And also, he's so nice.
Yeah, that's who people liked him.
He's a great guy, Roman.
Third dot point: pretending it's the camp ghost.
What? That never happened?
Nope, I forgot about that one.
You were going to have it with the camp ghost.
Apparently.
The camp of Ghost Jelly Jam is here.
Must have been the ghost that killed her. I planned on making these kids morons.
He wanders these halls saying, I'll asphyxiate a girl tonight.
Number 4, V, victim, was bullied, but of course after she's dead, no one can say a bad thing about her.
Yeah,
not really.
Pretty
People
quickly
still
got to
hated
saying bad stuff about her.
And number 5, counselors broke up a truth or dare game earlier where murderer learned details that made them snap. Alcohol bottles as proof of party.
Instead, I didn't need alcohol as proof of the party. I just said, did you have a party?
Yeah,
like, yeah, sweet.
Absolutely. It was very interesting.
It would have been more satisfying if I'd found the bottles and then been like, what about these? I found these bottles. What were you doing on a night of the...
Yeah, but then it made absolutely no sense for everyone to be aware of this.
Yeah, it worked out.
Yeah, to be aware of it and not say anything to you.
Yeah, so it kind of changed in the moment. But those are very different opening notes.
Yeah.
But I got caught up in this thing with Simba. Because I've then got, I check out the cabins, I talk to Harriet. I'm like writing notes about activities spread around. We got so obsessed with the fact that she rebuilds these cabins every year.
Don't say we.
I'm assuming that was nothing.
Of course it was
the
nothing.
The cabins got rebuilt every year.
What?
It was just...
would that be? That's stupid.
I didn't think it was really going to be a clue, but I just got mad at Harriet about it. Notes about the bunk beds, TV... So in the cabin, bunk beds, TV, ensuite, bag shelf, bottom bunk, not pristine, no struggle.
Yeah, whereas my pictures of the cabins and what's in the cabins is, here are the 5 cabins and the letter for which person is in them. Student 2 and student 3. Student 1 and victim.
Yeah.
Counselor 1, counselor 2. That's it. Just a rectangle with those letters and numbers in them. So actually going through what specifically was in them. Again, that seems like a weird thing for me not to have considered. And yet it was just one of those details that in the main murder wasn't relevant. Therefore, I never bothered.
Yeah, it's interesting. Because then I've got asphyxiation, and I've got on the top of my note that the phone was to be boffined.
Oh yeah, her phone was definitely always a thing.
A thing.
Yes, that one was definitely there. I have that at the bottom, like as a Deus Ex marking if we needed it was just, and then her phone will unlock.
Yeah, and that ended up happening right near, like in the final episode.
Quite late. Yeah. Because I didn't want you preoccupied with seeing this picture and then trying to
give me that phone,
spend all of your time like going back online, going to Vicky's school to find everyone who worked there.
And I would have.
Yeah.
Honestly, I would have. So it was a good call. Good call on your part, because I would have been obsessed with this phone and trying to identify it. I would have been like, this is the only thing that matters.
Yeah, and then what would this have turned into? If you had gotten that phone, like episode 2, you had seen that picture, gone to her school to try to identify whoever the dudes in the picture were. If you just sat back and said, cool, I ignore everything else. I spend all of my time and all of my energy doing this. There is very little way that I can say no to that in the
true.
end.
And then what would I have discovered? It would be like, this is a person handing a...
Well, you would figure out who that person was, and then I imagine you would spend all of your massive resources figuring out every contact that person ever had, which would lead you to Chelsea.
Yeah, and then what would it have been? It would have been like, great, okay, the person in the blackmail, we know it's about Chelsea, done, let's move on, right? You know, this is the same as if I'd been like day one and be like, okay, I'd look for fingerprints on
everything,
her clothes.
On everything.
And you find it's just Chelsea. Okay, done. I guess I solved it.
Yeah, but the thing is, the methods that I have are not necessarily better for that. They were just different. Like, I probably could have designed a murder mystery where that was the intended path for you to take. But it just wasn't, and therefore this potentially viable path just needed to be cut off. And by delaying your getting her phone, I could do that in a pretty straightforward way. But there's a limitless number of those paths that I can't just do that on the fly. And it's really quite difficult to control that.
You've got the mystery written, and I'm also trying to write a mystery at the same time. And two writers don't write a mystery in the same way, especially when one of them's good and one of them's bad. I said, pointing first at Dani, then at me. And so, right, it's an interesting one, right? Because when a writer writes a mystery, they can just write it. They just write the whole thing. It's like, great, this is just the truth of it. When I want something to be true, it becomes true, and now it's done. And then somebody else comes in and said, oh, what about if this were true, or if this was how we did it? Like, well, then I would have written a different mystery. If Poirot's first instinct was to get in and then, like, drive to a different part of the country, I would have put all the information in that other part of the country. Yeah. But I just decided he didn't decide to do that, and now I have all the information here. It's super easy,
so
guys.
All I can do is try to make my path the most compelling path. But that's a really difficult thing to do, much harder than with escape room stuff.
Yeah, and especially when we have different ideas of how we want to be compelled.
Yep.
Right? You can build the greatest boat in the world that travels so smoothly and so great, but if I take it and put it on a road, it's not going to go very well because I was expecting it to be a car.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how well your boat's designed, it's not going to do very well at all if I'm trying to drive it.
Well, it can't go 80 on the freeway, so really, it sucks.
It's a terrible boat. It's the worst boat I've ever driven.
But
Look at how it handles turns in this car park. Right? It's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's fair. All right, you want to hear some more else about my notes so you can see where things went?
Yeah, please. Tell me all about your notes.
Right.
People have heard my notes.
Yeah,
my notes are what happened.
Mine are 3
Your
pages of notes.
Happened.
There's not a crazy
Just
amount.
Read them out word for word.
There's very little different. Okay, next thing it says, method, smothered with pillow, plus tied down so no fighting back. Ties removed but marks still there. Ropes used from canoes. Canoes all gone?
Canoes all gone? And yeah, that all happened.
Yep. Allergy drama earlier, but that was Victoria's doing.
Sure, that happened.
2 to a cabin. Why wasn't victim's cabin mate there?
Interesting. And my thought was, for some reason, I was like, she was there and she was... Well, no, I think I always was like, okay, there's something fishy about her story. Like, I went back and I was just asleep the whole time. I thought, okay, that's wild. But I don't know what I could have done better about that. Right? Like, because... Maybe if I had gone to other people and be like, did you see her again that evening? Because Roman ended up having seen her, didn't he?
No, he had heard, they had heard him.
Yeah.
He may have. Yes,
he may
of course,
right?
that's
so
right. He thought he had seen them.
Maybe that's where it could have been. Or maybe I could have just gone on the assumption, like, obviously she wasn't in her cabin. And then when I talked to Chelsea, because Chelsea's the thing that sells it, right? Chelsea is, there were 2 sets of footprints. Winnie, right? Yeah. There were 2 sets of footprints. I could be like, oh, maybe that was Izzy.
See, that's interesting because for me, I would have gone with that Izzy and saying, cool, she says that she was here in her cabin, cool. That does not put her in any particular position murder-wise. That doesn't rule her out in any way. Absolutely not. It does call a lot of questions that, like, if she was there, if this is true, why not this? Why didn't this happen? And she has no good answers for why she didn't hear a murder happening right underneath her. Things like that. So then going into the, okay, now what if lie?
Yeah,
what
the
mean
options
that?
are either Vicky was murdered, or rather, what if the truth, which is Vicky was murdered somewhere else and she was very quietly put into a bed afterwards.
Yeah.
What if a lie, okay, she either wasn't in her cabin and she's lying about being there, maybe she has something secret going on, or she's lying about not hearing it because she was in her cabin doing the murder, right? Those like the 3, these are where the Zelda timeline splits into 3, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's
because like you had that idea of maybe she wasn't murdered in her bed, and you weren't the only one. Like other people who emailed in had questions about that. That never occurred to me in that one. And you know what? Maybe it's because I'd already done that in one of our earlier mysteries of someone's body moving.
That was well, I won't say, but yeah. Yeah, right. So it's interesting. It's like,
but yeah, and I because that just didn't occur to me. The idea of needing to have a way to rule that out wasn't something that I had planned.
But there's ways as well that, like, I think if I'd followed up on it, you could just be like, well, it's super muddy out there, and she's not covered in like mud. She's not dirty. She doesn't look like she's been like
so maybe that was good enough
by people.
But because I didn't have it in mind, and like. You did search her body, and all you found was some weird marks on her wrist. You didn't find mud or anything.
Been deterred from that idea if I'd stuck on it. Would be like, well, nothing other than that, other than the Isabel, nothing. What was her name?
Yeah.
Izzy. Yeah. Nothing about her other than her like I didn't hear it thing would indicate that she had come in from the outside.
Yeah.
There's nothing about the footprints. There's nothing about how she's arranged or arrayed. Like it would have been. You would have assumed that if that had happened, there'd be this type of stuff, and there isn't. So I could be like, great. Now I'm dissuaded from that.
Sometimes absence of evidence can be evidence
of absence.
Exactly.
So yeah, right. Like
there is no God.
So what Dani's saying is there's no God, and I need to be better at murder mysteries. But yeah, so that's how I think we could have dissuaded that, right? If you wanted to be like,
that's fair. That's fair. All
Next,
right.
So
yeah, and this is why that ended up being such a big thing, because that was one of the big problems. She had a roommate. That roommate needed to be gotten rid of, and the best way to get rid of her was the manner that I chose to, the whole secret relationship thing, which ended up being a big deal that everyone ended up sort of focusing on and honing in on, and then needing to decide, does that mean they are guilty of this thing, or is it a separate thing?
Yeah. Is this a Poirot in which finding out on a separate thing has no bearing on the murder at all because people can just be lying about other stuff? Or is this a 2-minute mystery where as soon as one person lies about any fact, no matter how obscure, they are the culprit?
Yeah, whereas from my point of view, it was literally the reason it was there. It wasn't even as a, let's make her a red herring so you might think she's the murderer. It was a, she needs to be out of the room. That was it.
Yeah, it's a justification for allowing there to be. Now, why is it? Like, so you could have, right, you're designing this murder. You could have, from the beginning, just been like, great, everyone has their own cabin. Solved. Now I don't need to get rid of a roommate. Everybody just has their own cabin. Is there a reason you didn't think of that? Or was it literally just you decided it was two to a cabin, then you noticed a problem, then you solved the problem?
I think I just thought, well, first of all, I've never been in a camp cabin that was solo. There's always bunk beds. But largely it was because I want problems like that.
Yeah,
I want questions.
Ideal was the, like, it's good to have the idea of, oh no, what's going on? Oh wait, I fixed it.
It was very much, if she has a roommate, there are questions about that.
That's true. So you're trying to create, you're not trying to eliminate all the problems, because if you eliminate all the problems,
you don't have
I just
a
walk
mystery.
in and I solve a murder.
Yeah.
I'm just like, she's dead, and she's, what's the Mitchell and Webb sketch, The Identity Killer, where every time he kills someone, he like puts a picture of his face and his name, and it's just like, I killed this person, here's my address. And the cop's like, there's no way we're going to track this guy. He's always one step ahead. Yeah, it's like, it'll be like that.
Fantastic. And that'll do it as well. Interesting point, this next dot point that I have here. Okay, S1, who was Izzy, hooking up with C1.
Woo-hoo.
Other students think they're lying about having a partner, S1.
Yep, girlfriend, a boyfriend in Canada.
Thinks she's sad and crazy and likely the killer.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. I find that quite interesting.
But that didn't really come up, that people were accusing
It didn't
Izzy.
so much. And I don't know if I was particularly married to that idea in the end, because I know that later on in my head, I very much had the idea of the kids not thinking, or even everyone there not really thinking that a kid would murder.
That's true. One of the things that I wanted to do in this arc, and again failed to do, was basically be like, hey, you random person, who do you think did it? Right? Roman, what do you think happened? Like, who do you think killed them? I think I did a little touched on this more than I've done before, but I want it to be more of a thing, because it allows me to understand and contextualize their relationships.
In this case, it would have been a lot more of a lot of the characters would have said, I don't know, but I know it couldn't have been this person. Like, Ramon and Roman would have basically vouched for each other for almost the entire time, that sort of thing. But then, and yes, so trying to figure that sort of thing, and then having to go, okay, so these two, if one of them is telling the truth, the other one is likely telling the truth.
Now we get to the murder mystery of like, one of us always tells the truth and one of us tells
100%.
lies. So I have to ask the right question. So if I go up to the murderer and I'm just like, are you not the murderer? Then I'll get it every time, right?
Fantastic.
That's how you solve this.
All right. S2, who had allergy scare, ends up as second victim. Medicine replaced with fake and allergen exposure, something.
Yep, nice. And that happened.
Sort of, yeah.
They just didn't die.
Yep.
Much better.
Counselors prepare food. Sort of.
Yeah, sort of.
Just didn't really matter. Then I have my most basic timeline of day 1. Roman has allergy scare. Counselors break up truth or dare game. Day 2. Vicky instigates fight between Hoskins and counselors. Second secret truth or dare game takes place. Izzy storms out when no one believes her. And then day 3, Canoe goes missing, Vicky is killed. Those all ended up being merged.
Yeah, we didn't really break the days down in that same way.
No, and that may have just been me like totally messing up the timeline because I know that I very much felt that way.
I
felt
felt very
scrambled.
confused about the days as well.
Totally on me for that. But yeah, I had no recollection of them being separate days looking at this now.
But because it's interesting, right? Multiple days is like a version of here's what should come out by episode X, right? You can be like, by the end of day 1, here are the things that have happened. Now we're going to get on to phase 2, day 2. But I think, again, that doesn't gel well with what I was trying to do, right? Again, it's like, because I'm following this one thing and this one thing, this one thing, this one thing. And you want to be like, well, that's going to lead to something. So I'll give it to you. But this should have been like a day 3 thing. But, I can't make it day 2 yet because you haven't done all the rest of the day 1 stuff. And so it sort of kind of all collapses in like that, where I'm following one 3-day thread in its entirety before I'm moving on to the other 3-day thread.
Yeah.
So I haven't done all the day 1 stuff when I want to move on to day 3. So that becomes like a problem. Because this isn't Majora's Mask where you can do that and then go back to day 1 and follow a different thread for 3 days.
Yeah. That was another thing that I feel like got a little bit more notice than I expected to. Vicky's fight with Maggie.
Yes.
Like, it started out being high ropes course related. For me, that was basically acknowledge that high ropes exists and that people sometimes do them. And just to make sure that you remembered that was a thing, because rope ended up being
That's
a
where
thing.
the rope was, yeah.
Yeah. But then after that, it was mostly, how did this truth or dare game happen? It was because the first one, Maggie broke it up. Vicky wanted to make sure that didn't happen again. She just, when she vendetted hard. But it didn't mean that there was more to their fight.
Yeah.
Which was definitely a suspected thing. And then after that, I've just got my character intros. I just have a paragraph about each character and just their little bits and pieces.
Cool. And that all probably came out in the thing, right? Is that
more or less, yeah. Yeah, so like for Trenton, said, yep, swimming enthusiast. He insists all kids are liars because, well, he would know. He's kind of perpetuating a big lie with one of them. So he and Isabella have been sneaking around for a few of the days. It means he gets inside gossip on the kids and can share info back, which definitely happened.
Yeah.
He knows that they hated Vicky, so entirely possible that one of them killed her. He revealed where confiscated alcohol was hidden and was in charge of canoes and discovers the missing one. So yeah, nothing particularly detailed.
No, he didn't end up
regards.
being the one. He didn't reveal to me where the confiscated alcohol was. He revealed it to the kids. I don't know if that's what that line was originally.
Well, no, it says he revealed where the confiscated alcohol was hidden.
Oh,
like as in to the kids.
To the kids. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's all true. That's all.
Yeah, nothing too fancy.
Yeah.
Yeah, not particularly. Yeah, nothing that I have in those is very interesting.
No,
they were
that's just base
they were
information.
my window pictures for these
that's
characters
that's what I
with
should
a
have
little
had
bit about what they
early on.
did in the story.
Yeah. So yeah, look, it's nice to be able to like identify stuff that we can do differently to keep the flow better and to get on the same page. That's the biggest issue. I don't think either of our styles needed super refining. It's just they needed to be gelled together because they were too different.
Could have been. Like, I know that I could definitely refine these better. Like, by the end of it, so take a look at these paragraphs for the adults.
Yeah.
and then take a look for the kids.
They're just like 2 lines.
Yeah, they suddenly become 2 lines. I did not care about these kids.
Even though one of them was the murderer.
Yeah, super didn't care. These were window pictures. This is your first impression of this kid is going to be this.
Except my first impression for some of them was right at the end of the end of the arc.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, cool.
Yep. All right. So what did I end up saying? Motive. In the Truth or Dare game, Vicky revealed that she was aware of some drug selling going on at school and she'd been deliberating whether to tell the police. Other kids encouraged her, so she decided she would. Chelsea, competitive sports player, is one of the drug users involved and will lose her future if found out. With Roman, he told Chelsea and Winnie that he'd seen something, a secret meeting between a man and a student, and would tell the detectives. He's talking about Trenton and Isabella, but Chelsea thinks he means her and the drug-selling teacher.
Yeah,
Done.
fair. And
That was
that ended up being the reveal. That was the solution that we kind of put
So
together.
the bare bones of it stayed there. It's just all of the extra trappings ended up being malleable and not necessarily in the best ways.
Now, part of the culmination at the end there was about, like, there was all this information about, like, who had mud on their shoes. And then there was, like, Chelsea trying to implicate Maggie specifically by sending in fake information. Is that all in your notes?
Not
Or was
even a
that
little bit.
completely all made up?
No, the idea of it even having mud was just basically to have buried alcohol bottles, which apparently, like, the order that I had that intended, apparently I intended you should
Whereas for
discover
me,
that.
mud was so important.
Whereas then only later did I start thinking that could be a thing that we can work with here. But it can't have been too much later because I swear quite early on I made mentions of shoes, of clean shoes or dirty shoes.
Let me check
something
my
like that.
notes.
I don't even know if it was necessarily something that you noted, but you started going through students' belongings
Yeah,
in episode 1.
Episode 1. Let me just find my notes. Back in dinner party. Now I'm over in escape room playtests. Now I'm over at website planning.
But yeah, it's not in my notes anywhere that was important. But even I, by episode 2 or 3 or something, really desperately was hoping that you would ask more about mud and shoes.
Yeah.
So somewhere early on I discovered that was going to be important.
Yeah, it's interesting.
And what was the other part of that besides shoes?
The framing of Maggie.
Oh, yeah, that was completely last minute because, well, basically you kept going to Maggie. You kept thinking it was Maggie.
Yeah.
So I had to go, cool. Well, apparently if I've screwed this up enough that Maggie looks like the guilty one, I've got to make that intentional.
It worked really well, actually. Like, I found it really engaging. It was like, I want to go for Maggie. And then it's handed to me on way too silver a platter. And it's kind of like, okay, that's all a bit odd.
I was terrified you were going to accept that platter.
It was pretty silver, but I was almost going to take it. But
I'm pretty sure, in fact, that may have been a thing that I said right at the end that may have gotten cut or maybe not, I can't remember, which you were sort of going, oh, okay, so Maggie. All right, good. To which I went, who just called you? Or whatever. Who just emailed that?
Why did somebody send this to you? I was like, yeah, good point. Someone did just randomly email this to me. So that worked really well, right? It was a nice way of going with my own failure and turning it into a narratively satisfying
But
twist.
yeah, then it was very much like, I'm sure there are things that now, if you go back in the early episodes, that probably don't work for that. I'm hoping that there aren't, or that if they are minor and excusable away. But yeah, I don't know because that was a last minute thing.
I think it all came together pretty well.
Yeah. These are all basically everything about this is like this is a first draft of an improv show is what it feels like. And if we were going to actually perform it for real, then we could make it
we've
smoother.
already performed it. We've recorded it and created real media. But I think that's part of it, right? Part of it is that I think part of it is that it has that lack of polish because it is not even fully improvised, but like it is one person trying to figure it out.
Yeah,
you know?
but then it ends up being, much more improvised on my part than I want it to be.
Yeah.
Like, this is not a fleshed out, complete, seamless mystery. I don't know if it can be. If I manage to get one of these that just works top to bottom and is fantastic, then I will consider the show job done.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's what you hear that. As soon as we get one perfect, the show's over. That's no more Solve This Murder ever again. So I better not be too good.
Likewise.
I had a bit of fun with the music for this one.
Oh, yeah?
No, it wasn't. I was struggling with it a bit in terms of finding a theme. I think when I did Dinner Party, the music was great straight away because I went, well, look, I mean, I'm not saying it was really, really good music, but my process for it was great. It was the first time I put music to something was Dinner Party.
Really?
And I sort of went, I think even before doing anything for Escape This Podcast.
Oh my God.
Music really started with this, and I was like, I just got a feeling for Hugh in Dinner Party. I was like, I got Hugh's theme, I'm going to play with that. And back then I was doing a lot of loops, like on GarageBand, and now I was doing slightly less of that. A lot of the stuff I'm doing is completely just like done by me. I'm not using any loops. I'm not using any stuff. I think for Slane Singer, like I did a lot of loops because it was so fun with that one because it was just like, it's a rock theme, right? So everybody I'll take a different instrument to play with,
sure.
and I'll just play rock music, right? So like I'll do, for one of them, it was like all drums, and it was like drums, and then like coming with the guitar halfway through because it was like, hey, they're not a drummer, or they, you know.
But then in one like this where you've got your elevator pitches, I don't know, this person's a dumb kid.
Right? So it was more difficult to kind of be like, what's the musical motif of this whole thing? And what I ended up with is I had the camp theme, which is like done on guitar, fake guitar, but you know, I just played that on a guitar. I picked a couple of chords that went well into each other and played with those and transitioning between them, right? It was great fun. If you ever want to do faux guitar, GarageBand on iPad works so well because you can basically set up different columns to be all the neck of the six strings of a guitar tuned to a different chord, and you can just like jump between them and play all those. It's really, really fun. So I played around a lot with that, and I enjoyed doing that.
Sounds like it helps if you know a bit about what a guitar is.
Yeah, that one
going in.
That one you need to know at least a little bit of guitar. Otherwise, you just pick loops or play it like the guitar on the keyboard.
Yeah.
And then I had a thing with where the kids, I took the same basic tune. In fact, I took the same melody and then I changed the backing and I changed the instrument playing the melody, I think, for each of the kids. Like Roman had the same melody and stuff as Chelsea, as Izzy, as whatever, but I changed up how it sounded. I changed like the what instruments were playing things, and I did the same thing then for the counselors. And then Harriet Hoskins had her fancy tune. So I had a bit of fun with that. I think in the end I was fairly happy with it, but I think when we got to like dealing with lots of kids at once and jumping between them, I think it was a little bit samey because it was built on the same tune, and we had just like one character, other character, and it felt like I was playing the same song over and over again, I think. But I enjoyed making the music for this. I had a bit of trouble with it, but I liked where it ended up. I think Slane Singer I liked. I really love the music in Slane Singer.
It sounds like you have the same problem with music that I have when trying to do character voices, which is, I mean, I could make them all wildly different, but that wouldn't really mesh very well together. And like if I try to do it in a semi-natural way, they're all going to end up sounding very similar to each other.
Because I didn't have like really strong because they were all still rich kids at a camp. I didn't have these really strong thematic things to play with them. Like I think for Dinner Party, I played a lot with like, he's the tech guy. Great. I use the tech stuff. She's she's got this like secret stuff. So I'm using like little secret mystery stuff. You know, he's the kind of jazzy host of the party, rich guy, but he's kind of suave. Great. I take the jazz trumpets and stuff and I throw them all in there. When I go to like Nala, and I was like, great, bumbling police music is wonderful. Throw it in there. Right? Like I could just play with these things. And I think because I had less of that, I stuck with this idea of like counselor theme, kids theme, owner's theme, divvy it up, like change it up for each of those people. But because I so often dealt with them in blocks, I think maybe that could have started to sound samey, but I enjoyed the music. I had a lot of fun with it.
Good.
I've no idea what the next one's going to be, so we'll find out how that works.
You and me both.
Do we want to... I think we've been talking for a long time. This is a long episode. This is longer than any normal episode we do.
Oh, yeah.
But it's been fun to go back through this. Do we want to talk about who is the detective of the arc?
All right, so we've got some... thoughts regarding this because, like we've been saying, following the way that we structured this and the fact that the murderer wasn't even really talked to until 5/7 of the way through, it was never going to be easy for people to pinpoint who the murderer was in any timely fashion. But then, is that the most important thing? Is that what we're looking for in Top to Tep?
In Top to Tep, yeah. In Top to Tep, what are we looking for?
Yeah, is it about pinpointing the murderer? Is it understanding what was going on? And that sort of thing. So, like, I had things where the very first people who identified I think Izzy and Trenton having a thing in the background well before it had been revealed by you, before you knew that. And I basically went, oh, cool, well, that's going to be it. Like, that's going to be the best thing to do. It wasn't about who the murderer was.
No, it was
seeing what was going on and what had gone on so far.
Given the information that was already out, having the best interpretation of that information.
Exactly.
Did they end up with Detective of the Week, or is there someone who's not week, arc?
So then, as we got further into it, people started having more different ideas about what was going on, and there were lots of good ones. People got bits and pieces of the information out, and of course, as always happens, some people had guesses about what was going on that made me think, oh,
that would be so much better.
I should have done that. Oh, that makes sense. Which was unfortunate for me. And then as we progressed towards the end, people did start side-eyeing Chelsea and start noticing that she was extremely suspicious for various reasons. And I think what I've ended up choosing was people who did quite promptly, after her introduction, throw the book at Chelsea. But not just that, it was also due to having some underlying information about what was going on and identifying some things that nobody else had found out. Things like saying, ooh, this high ropes course, needing to get up and down in a hurry. There are not many of the people here who could have done that.
Yes, interesting.
And Chelsea would be one of the people who could do that. And also going into, ooh, what we know about Winnie's character, she wants things to be very dramatic and movie-ish. She could be playing that sort of part, like covering for the friend. Is a role
so they
that
had
she
the most,
could be
it
playing.
wasn't just about
and that was
picking
spot
who the
on what I
murderer
wanted.
was. It was about building it all around the right information and the right...
Exactly, which I felt like that was box checking or character crossings out in the logic puzzle sort of way.
I wasn't.
Exactly. So the people that I think I got to give this one to, even though it was painfully close and... God, it was a really hard decision.
There were a lot of really... We'll talk about some honorable mentions.
We had to just sit... Well,
not by name, but in general. I mean, you just did. I have a few as well afterwards.
Oh, okay. Well, why haven't you said them already?
I was waiting for you to reveal.
Cool. All right, sure. Well, yeah, I think I've got to give it to Duke and Duchess, Trevor and Ashley. Well done. You had the most things in yours that made me go, yes, that's what I was going for.
Well, wonderful. Good on you. You'll be on our wall of detectives, which again, there is a link below. You can see it. Your name's written up in lights. Yeah, good work.
You've done a lot with the website since I last looked.
I also wanted to make specific mention of on our fan Discord. There's a channel for Solve This Murder, which was basically.
I haven't seen
if
those.
you scroll back through that channel for ages, it is just walls and walls of blacked out text. It is walls and walls of blacked out text of people guessing and chatting about the mystery and talking about what they think and who it is and making new guesses. And that was really great. There was a lot, it was close to for some of them in terms of being put up on the wall. It's harder when you don't email in the suggestions after discussing them, but still people putting their stuff there. And they didn't know, there were a lot of people who had like a moment of like, oh, maybe it's Chelsea. And then going off it and thinking, no, it can't be Chelsea. I'm a fool. In fact, when it got revealed, there were quite a few people in there commenting, saying like, I'm so silly. Look at me.
Yeah?
Here's me from weeks back saying, I think it's Chelsea. And then saying...
That's a relief to me.
And then saying, no, it can't have been Chelsea because of these. I should have stuck with my gut. I'm a fool.
Except, I don't like hearing, no, it couldn't have been Chelsea because that's not the feeling I want.
Well, no, I don't know if they did that. But so a lot of people who didn't stick with their first gut instincts, but
you shouldn't have to rely on gut instincts for a murder mystery.
It was a really nice place for people to discuss them and bounce ideas off each other.
And that's cool because I don't get to read those ones. So
you say that like somebody's stopping you.
Yep. I choose not to Discord. A couple of people had ones like suggesting that there was a pre-existing relationship between Maggie and Chelsea in some way, some background. Were they related to each other?
And there kind of was.
Well, that was coming in at around the same time, right before the reveal that Chelsea had, in a panic, decided to frame her for it, which I was going, yeah, cool. You identified that there was something linking them very strongly here. It just wasn't the link that I was choosing. And so, yeah, things like that, I really appreciate it. And it did make me go, oh, man, should I have made that a thing?
Yeah.
But then, if they were secretly related to each other, how could I have possibly kept that hidden for anything? That's not, wouldn't have been an easy thing.
But look, lots of fun, lots of guesses, more guesses than we've had before. Lots of people sending
it was
emails,
wonderful
chatting
to
on the
read.
Discord.
If I haven't replied to you yet, it's generally because you respond and the mystery isn't over yet, and I go, I can't say anything. So if I do reply to you, you'll have noticed most of my replies have been, hey, thanks for that. Sorry, I can't say anything.
But yes, so one more time, congratulations to Trevor and Ashley, who did dub themselves the Duke and Duchess of Police. Spectacular guess, spectacular reasoning, and you're going to be the detectives of this arc. So congratulations, you're now all the detectives. All right, I think we should finish up there.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any requests for the next one? Because I haven't written it yet.
Any requests?
Fewer suspects. Possibly is my own request for me.
Fewer suspects. No, I think we're both pretty much on a good page of where we want to be now. Just
let's
put
hope.
this one in space.
All right.
On the space station.
Sure.
I'll be flying up to the International Space Station to solve crime.
Great.
No, do whatever you want. All right, thanks, everybody. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed this sort of wrap-up. Again, if you have an idea for a fun name for this wrap-up, this dissect this...
Autopsy.
We're going to call it the Autopsy. Don't give me a suggestion. It's called the Autopsy, babies. All right, so that was the end of the Autopsy. Thank you very much. We'll see you next time. I'm your coroner, Bill. And she's your...
Dead body?
She's your corpse, innards, and evidence, Dani. I'm your corpse, innards, and time of death, Dani. See you later. That's the Autopsy. Bye, everybody.